Good afternoon, guys. Week 4 study was primarily focused on the job turnovers and a lot of predictive variables in job stability for a candidate. First thing I'd like to discuss would be the job turnover study, when they stated that predicting and hypothesizing that a candidate will most likely stay within a company if they have families or friends in there. Now, that was an interesting theory, and doing that as a observational research was very great, but I do feel as though that what they missed in this study was addressing the fact that the intrinsic motivation might be decreased if an employee or candidate feels as though they are secure. So security within that field and within that referral field, especially if that candidate has a family or friend of the higher position, would decrease intrinsic motivation. And that would have been a great aspect to see in that story. Furthermore, I would like to go discuss more about the GMA. The GMA was actually one of the best articles I read so far, and I would like to say I'm glad that I read that study. Very interesting. So, on different aspects of the GMA, which is general mental ability, I memorized that one. They focus more on ways to predict occupational level that could be attained based on a level of GMA of that individual, stating that GMA predicts performance and learning in the job, other traits specific to aptitudes and job performance. So they did do a cross-sectional and longitudinal study, which is very interesting. General tests determining that lower GMA makes it harder to enter a high-level occupation, whereas the lower end increase with the occupation level, suggesting minimum GMA is required for higher level occupations. That was actually a very interesting theory, and also it went on into stating that longitudinal studies show that GMA measures earlier in predicting later occupational attainment. Now, even though that can be very interesting finding a longitudinal study, the only thing with longitudinal studies is that you also most likely will lose a lot of participants, and also there could be a lot of extraneous factors that could possibly, mess up your data. So yes, it did actually find a correlation, and it did support it, but to what extent, what influenced that? Now, what other substances, maybe drug abuse or environmental position, that could actually decrease general mental ability? Because to what certain extent is it sustainable? Can somebody's mental ability decrease and increase? And the study did not really address that, which is very interesting, but at the same time, it's certain things that you cannot measure within a longitudinal study, due to the fact that even though you can study the patient, you can't be there. Study the employee, you can't actually be there the whole time. So furthermore, I did state that the GMA exceeds, if the GMA exceeds the complexity of the job, they'll most likely move into a higher complexity. That was a very interesting theory and a very, very interesting method to use. I think they used the cross-sectional for that one, but I do feel that was limiting if you apply the Peters principle into that theory. Now, the Peters principle is stating that that moving an employee. Sorry, I've been saying patient all day today, and that's all I read in the notes. So whenever I address something, I always say patient. I do apologize. You have to be patient with me. It's a light joke. Okay, so seeing employees moving to a higher position, a more higher complex occupation, would be interesting in the occupation all put together, but that will be limiting due to the fact that it's not the incompetence or general mental ability being low, but it could be certain skills. For example, I do know a lot of individuals with high general mental abilities, where they're moving to a more social job, such as the marketing team, where you have to make relationships with others and display certain skills that they do not have or cannot attain because it's not their natural skill set. Pardon me. So that'll make it harder for a job to actually well, harder for an individual to actually get into that job because certain skills are not just mentally, you know, obtained, but it's just not mentally given, or it's not naturally there. I said GMA is important for academic performance and has little to do with real world performance, which actually supported my theory, stating that certain skills, well, my statement saying that certain skills are necessary, and GMA would not be able to predict that, which is very interesting. So, furthermore, it went into more of the self-control. I hope I'm saying that right. That was actually a very interesting thing to read about, especially when he addresses the cultural values and perception. Understanding that cultural values and perception can be seen within a lot of psychology branches. Also, I had a class in political science where I thought so this theory was more of a reiteration of the attribution and situational theory, where an individual would basically, let's say, for example, in a political or social political topic or controversy, an individual will more likely probably to give blame based on their own perception. So if I'm a person that feels like most successful would be more right wing, and I'm more of a independent in the self-control, I almost likely put that blame on the individual because it's due to their performance and the ability to address and dissolve and resolve the situation, which would be more applied to that. But if I'm more an individual that's interdependent and more of a group and position and seeing how I'm positioned, I could put it more into the situation, or when I say, well, this is the situation and this is what's occurring. Therefore, that would be more effective approach, and that would not be fair to that individual. I was kind of disappointed when I found out the test did not make a difference. Well, there was not any significant difference between the national and cultural aspect of it, which was, I kind of did expect that there was a difference between nationality and there would be a greater variation between nationality and cultural, because cultural is not just race or, religion. It's a combination of multiple, variables that could affect a person's perception and judgment. So I did like the fact that it mentioned that the interdependent individual would be more of a performance, and they would, be more favorable of job relatedness productivity values. So they will most likely care about performing well in order to obtain more self-oriented, or in this case, they described it as ascription-oriented positions, where they would want to, have more recognition for their work. Although that is very important, having someone with too much independent when they move up most likely would not be able to lead a team, because they only care about individual performance and they'll most likely focus on their performance, and they would need more of a interdependent where they would focus on each position of their co-workers in the team in order to formulate a team. But being too independent would never have an individual rising up to the top. So knowing how to balance that is essential. It's a great key component in understanding how to work with a team and increasing performance. Now, I do not believe that, back to the turnover, I do not believe that the research one would actually, not the research, the referral would actually lead to greater performance. I mean, not greater performance, longer stay. Longer stay can have a lot of extreme variables. There could be also social issues. There could be economic shifts. There could be the fact that, more internalized issues. So I do see that they stated that the pre-attitudes, what was the thing? Predispositions would be a great way to value self-confidence, decisiveness, and that would determine how well a employee will be doing, will do within that company.